Chapter 22. On Sunday morning, Dwayne Scrooge Sr. dragged himself out of bed and stumbled to the front door. "How'd you get here so fast?" he asked to Millicent Winship. "Chartered a jet plan. Now open the door." With fake cheer, Dwayne Scrooge Sr. welcomed his mother-in-law into the house. She almost knocked him down as she whisked past. There was not a wrinkle to be seen in her elegant gray pantsuit, not one silver hair out of place on her head. "Did you sleep in that stupid hat?" she asked. "I guess." Dwayne Sr. was more worried about his reaction to her reaction to his NASCAR boxer shorts. Mrs. Winship scowled and looked away. "Go put on some pants, for heaven's sake. Keep that awful parrot away from me or I'm going to pluck her bald. Millie, she's not a parrot, she's a macaw. A nuisance is what she is. Now hurry up." Dwayne Scrooge Sr. pulled up some jeans and wrestled Nadine to her cage. When he returned to the living room. Mrs. Winship was waiting with folded arms. "So my grandson is a fugitive now," she said. "I got the whole ugly story from the headmaster. DJ's been suspended from Truman as well. But I suppose that's the least of our problems. The cops are making a big mistake. Where is he now?" "I don't honestly know," Dwayne Scrooge Sr. said. He comes and goes like a sort of ghost." "And you have no way of reaching him? What about his cell phone that I bought him?" "He never picks up, Millie. Did you tell his mom about this mess?" "Of course, I phoned her right away." "Is she coming back?" "No, Dwayne. What good would that do?" Mrs. Winship brushed the stale cracker crumbs off the chair and sat down. Her daughter had offered to call the boy to urge him to surrender, but she had not offered to come home and see him. Dwayne Sr. said, "It's not cheap, I guess, flying all the way from France. Money has nothing to do with it. I would have bought her a first-class ticket." And then what? The only time that Mrs. Winship felt old was when she had to talk about her daughter. "Whitney says she has to stay and take care of the shop. She says it's a busy season." Dwayne Sr. gazed drearily at the floor. "In other words, cheese is more important than her own flesh and blood." "I'm sorry, Dwayne. Truly I am. What's going to happen to Junior?" "I've contacted a lawyer. What do you think he's hiding? Where do you think he's hiding?" "Somewhere out there in the boonies," Dwayne Sr. motioned with a limp wave. "That's very helpful," Mrs. Winship muttered. "Narrows it down to about 2 million acres. She stood up, smoothed her slacks, and slung her purse over her shoulder. "Next time you see your son, please inform him his grandmother strongly suggested he turn himself into the police as soon as possible. Tell him that's the only way I can help him out of this mess." "I will, Millie, but DJ listens to me about as good as Whitney listens to you." Mrs. Winship let that remark slide. Dwayne Sr. had a right to be bitter. He loved Whitney, but she left him anyway. According to the newspaper, Dwayne's book bag was found at the scene of the arson. Mrs. Winship said, "How could that possibly be true if he's innocent?" Dwayne Sr. spilled out the jumbled theory about the government tax collector man stealing Junior's backpack from the house. Mrs. Winship looked doubtful. "Well, we've certainly got our work cut out for us," she said, shouldering past Dwayne Sr. on her way out the door. "Thank you, Millie," he called after her. She spun around the steps. "Thanks for what?" "For caring so much about the boy." "Believe it or not, I care about you both," Mrs. Winship said gruffly. "Now go play with your parrot." Drake McBride went straight from the hospital to a suite at the swanky Ritz-Carlton Hotel, so he could recuperate in high style. Jimmy Lee Bayless followed orders, brought the man with the bloodhound up to the room. "The dog's name is Horace. It has humongous flappy ears and rubbery wet jowls and a nose like a loaf of gingerbread." It promptly lay down on the floor and dozed off into a puddle of drool. "Horace is tired," explained the handler. "This is all you got? We need more than one hound," Drake McBride complained. "No, you don't," said the handler. "They hunt alone. I checked it out with my buddies back in Houston," Jimmy Lee Bayless said. Drake McBride, still sprawled out on the bed, insisted they needed a whole pack of dogs. "That's how they catch those bears, right?" The handler said, "I didn't know you was after bears. I thought you was after a human." "We are," Jimmy Lee Bayless said. His stomach felt like he had swallowed a handful of barbecue coals. He explained to his boss that Horace was a world-class manhunter. They used him to track down missing persons, lost hikers, escaped convicts. Twice he was on America's Most Wanted. "All he needs is a scent," the handler said. "Do we have a scent?" Drake McBride said grumpily. Jimmy Lee Bayless said, "We do. The culprit's odor was out on dozens of pink flags that he touched while rearranging them." When Drake McBride reached for a glass of water on the nightstand, he let out a yelp of pain, which caused Horace briefly to open watery brown eyes and blink. Mr. McBride got thrown from a horse and busted some ribs, Jimmy Lee Bayless informed the dog handler. Got me a concussion, too, Drake added. Hey, partner. Hey, do you know anybody who wants to buy a thoroughbred real cheap? The handler said no. Can you get started today, Jimmy Lee Bayless said. We'll take you out there by helicopter. That's fine. And you're sure this dog can follow the smell of a person through a tropical swamp? He can follow the smell of a person through a vinegar factory, the handler said. Drake McBride pointed at the bloodhound, whose eyes were once again sagged shut. We'll let old Horace be done with his nap. He's done with his nap when I say he is. How about right now, because I got to talk to Mr. Bayless in private. Drake McBride clapped his hands 3 times. Horace, wake up, Horace. The dog did not stir. Much to Jimmy Lee Bayless's dismay, Drake McBride scratched his unshaven cheeks. Well, I ain't impressed. Let's find another mutt, Jimmy Lee. The bloodhound handler softly clicked his tongue, and Horace sprang up off the floor like an electrified, nostrils in the air, tails erect, eyes wide and shining. Don't call him a mutt, the handler said. Drake McBride chuckled. Sorry, Horace. Now will you two excuse us, please? Jimmy Lee Bayless led the bloodhound and the handler to the door of the suite and said he'd meet them in the lobby in 10 minutes. When he returned to the bedroom, he found Drake McBride upright, massaging his head. His pajama shirt was unbuttoned, exposing his heavily taped chest. My old man called last night, and he's very unhappy. I lied and told him everything down here is going smooth as silk. And it will be once we get rid of this problem. Jimmy Lee Bayless was well aware that the Red Diamond Energy Corporation wouldn't exist if it weren't for Drake McBride's rich father. He was also aware that Drake McBride's father had dwindling patience with Drake McBride. Sir, once that bloodhound hunts down this guy on the property, or guys, Drake McBride said, whoever's messing with our stuff. Right, but after we catch him, what are we going to do with him? Jimmy Lee Bayless asked. What if they already found the pirate well? We can't call the cops because they're just going to rat us out. Then you and me are the ones who are going to get hauled to jail. No, we can't call the cops, definitely not, agreed Drake McBride. So what are we supposed to do with these vandals? If they already know about Section 22, I mean. There was a pause that got heavier with each passing second. I hadn't worked out all the details, Drake McBride said finally, but whatever we do, it takes us to protect this project. You understand, partner? Whatever it takes. It was not an answer that made Jimmy Lee Bayless' belly stop burning. The digital clock by Nick's bed said 9:15, which was odd. On most Sunday mornings, his mother had woke him up by 8 sharp so they could make buttermilk pancakes and bacon. He rolled out of bed and put on his robe. From down the hall came the sound of muffled noises, a discussion underway. Through the window, he saw a gray U.S. Army van parked in the driveway. Nick ran to the living room just as they were hauling his father into the wheelchair by 2 soldiers. His mother stood stiffly at the door and the knuckles of one hand pressed to her chin. What's going on? Nick said. Minor setback, his father said hoarsely. They missed me up at Walter Reed, I guess. His father looked feverish and his eyes were red in fatigue. Nick turned to his mom. Did the infection come back? It never went away. One of the soldiers rolled the wheelchair into the van, which had the ramp that elevated Nick's dad into the side door, and the other soldier carried the small nylon suitcase that Nick's mother had packed. He placed in the van beside the wheelchair. Captain Gregory Waters kicked the woolen blanket off his legs and said, I'm not 80 years old. Nick's mother kissed his father goodbye and said, I'll come up and see you in a day or 2. Me too, Nick said. No, sir, you're not missing one more day of school, he told his father. But Dad, that's enough. I'll be home again before you know it. He squeezed Nick's right arm. Hey, are you keeping that sling off? Don't tell me you're giving up the Southern Paul life. Just wait. By the time you get back, I'll be totally a hardcore lefty. His father managed a smile, but Nick could see the pain in his face. Yeah, Nicky, we'll go fly fishing down in the Everglades City, just the 2 of us. Nick and his mother waved as the van pulled out of the driveway, and they continued waving long after Captain Gregory Waters could no longer see them. Nick was dazed, and the whole scene seemed like a terrible dream. His dad had seemed okay the night before. What's going on, Mom? Tell me. After breakfast, she said crossly. I'm not hungry. Well, I am. She was, too. 3 pancakes, 2 strips of bacon, a banana, half cup blueberries, and a tall glass of fresh squeezed orange juice. Nick picked at a bowl of dry granola. He waited, fidgeting until his mother finished, and there was no point in nagging her. After pouring herself a cup of coffee, she settled in and told him what happened. Remember when you tried to call your dad at the hospital, but he was gone? Sure, that was the day he came home. Yes, he came home, Nick's mother said. He came home without telling his doctors. He strolled right out of the Walter Reed at 4:30 in the morning, grabbed a cab, and went straight to the airport. No way. It was a foolish thing to do. He wasn't ready, Nicky. So he lied? He didn't want us to worry. Is he crazy or what? Nick said angrily. Your dad wanted to be here more than anything. He was sure he'd get better faster if he was home with you and me. But he didn't get better, Nick said. He got worse. His mother was staring at her coffee, stirring it slowly with the wrong end of the spoon. She said, last night he woke up with the chills and a 100-degree fever. So I knew the infection wasn't gone. He was so miserable he finally admitted the truth. He got all He's still got the shrapnel from the rocket in his shoulder and he needs more surgery. Oh no, Nick sagged in the chair. Your dad's a tough customer. He'll be all right. What about you, Mom? I'm pretty darn tough myself in case you hadn't noticed. Now, she said, rising, I better go pack. I'm flying to be with your father. Nick held her tight. I can't believe he bailed on the hospital. If I ever did something like that, I'd be grounded for a year. It wasn't the brainiest move, Nick's mother agreed, but he missed us, Nicky, that's all. Let's just be thankful he's not in Iraq anymore. As soon as the doctors in Washington finish fixing him, he'll be home for good. After his mom left, Nick tried to keep busy and not worry about his dad. He cleaned the kitchen sink and loaded the dirty laundry into the washing machine and worked some algebra problems and rewrote the outline for English essay that wasn't due for 2 weeks. Marta called twice, but Nick didn't answer the phone. He wasn't in the mood to talk to any of his friends. For lunch, he fixed a peanut butter sandwich. He took only 3 bites. He had absolutely no appetite and was much too nervous energy. So he put on his Red Sox cap and went back to the backyard and threw baseballs left-handed at the pitching net until his elbow throbbed. There was so much he wanted to talk to his father about, yet he understood that there was no time to be selfish. It was essential for his dad to return to the hospital and get the operation he needed. After retrieving the balls from the net, Nick lugged the bucket back to the homemade pitching mound and resumed throwing again, as hard as he could despite the burning ache. In the middle of a wind-up, a voice from behind said, "You're going to wreck your arm, dude." Nick spun around and saw Smoke walking the motorcycle around the corner of the house. "What are you doing here?" Nick said. Dwayne Scrooge Jr. leaned the bike against the wall and said, "You got to help me. They turned a manhunter dog loose on where the camp is." "Who did?" "The oil company." "Where's Twilly?" "Running around like crazy. He's the one who told me to come get you." Smoke looked around nervously. "I can't hide out at home base because of the cops. Now they got a squad car parked right in front of the house." "What about Mrs. Starch and the baby panther?" Nick said. "They're okay so far, but that dog is good, man. That dog is a pro." "How can I help?" said Nick, knowing what the answer would be. "I need a place to stay," Smoke said, "just for a while." "Sure." Nick dropped the baseball to the bucket. He wondered how or even if he should tell his mom. It probably would be the first time she had a fugitive as a house guest. End of chapter.